Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. I don't know whether this is a political video, a warning, just an old guy saying the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. But you guys can make up your mind on that one. I'm walking in one of the poorer areas of China, or of Nanning, China, and it's maybe sort of to prove a point. There's been a lot of Chinese people have emigrated to different countries around the world over the past 100 years or more, and the reason for that is they were looking for a better life for themselves and their families. And you know, back in the day, China used to be a pretty hard place to live. There wasn't a lot of future there. There wasn't a lot of wealth in the country. Okay, so fast forward 100 years or 50 years if you immigrated to, say, Canada 50 years ago. Now China is a growing country. Why would you leave a place like China now? It would be like having an investment that's going to pay off dividends every year for the next 20 years, and you take your money out of that investment and put it someplace else. It wouldn't make any sense. So immigration out of China is probably not a good idea at this point. I'm making this video for the Chinese people that are thinking about emigrating. The Chinese people that have already emigrated, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them that are going to make comments below in the comment section and give me their bird's eye view of their existence in a different country. See, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence, and some of the guys that have immigrated will tell you that. How would you say that? The world outside is so unkind to Chinese people, but not just Chinese people, to black people, to North American Indians, to any minority that goes to the United States, Australia, Europe, you know, basically a white Anglo-Saxon, I guess they call it, country. So basically this video is about the difficulties that Chinese face when they leave the country, when they leave China to, say, Canada, the United States, or any other country. The first thing they're going to notice is that if you were a doctor, you're not a doctor anymore. Your credentials aren't recognized by any of the first world countries. If you're an engineer, you're not an engineer anymore. So right off the bat, on your immigration application, you have to apply and get jobs for something lower than what you're educated for in China. So you're going to be knocked down a couple of notches, and so it sort of takes you down right off the bat when you hit another country. The next thing you're going to notice is the language differences. Sure, your language if you know English, but it's Chinglish is a form of English where, and yes, that's a racist term that I'm using, just for the fact that I see it and I hear it all the time from a lot of different people. When I was doing immigration into Canada, you know, they would think because I'm a white guy, they didn't know I was married to a Chinese girl. Because I'm a white guy, I have the same attitude as they do. No, I had many of discussion with many of people about that. Anyway, so the language requirements are terrible. So when you're trying to get a job in a place like Canada, and your language isn't exactly the same as the people that are looking for somebody to work, it's harder to get a job. You got it, guys. So you're discriminated against not only because you're Chinese, but because your English isn't perfect English as was taught in a Canadian school. The next thing you're going to notice is the food. China is the food capital of the frickin' world, and you get into a place like Canada and the food it doesn't cut it. It's just not as good. It sucks, to tell you the truth. You get bored with it real easy. So all of these things that you're going to miss about China, but one of the bigger things that you're going to miss is the culture, the friendship, being part of the community. going to the wet markets and getting duck. You know, it's one of those things that you can't export with your ass over to another country. When you go out for breakfast, you're not going to be able to get your noodle soup. You're not going to be able to get dim sum, proper dim sum, egg noodles on the street. And if you do, you're going to be paying through the nose for it. Yes. You wonder why Chinese congregate together in Chinatowns around the world. It's because they are discriminated against, and they stick to their own because it's the only place that they can sort of keep some of their culture. They can maybe find some of the foods that they like. People aren't discriminating against them. It's just one of those things. Another thing you're going to notice right away is the safety on the streets during the day in certain areas of the larger cities, and at night in a lot of the smaller cities. In China, you're used to a place that is super safe. People don't go out of their way to rob you. People don't go out of their way to assault, pick fights. The Chinese are pretty passive characters. You don't see fighting. You don't see aggression. You don't see violence in China. You might get people bitching and complaining at each other. You know, they're not happy, but it's more yelling at each other. In the Western world, it is frickin' dangerous. There's places that you don't want to go, you don't want to walk, especially at night, because you'll walk in, but you're not going to walk out, especially with your wallet, your cell phone, and everything else you've got, and maybe your life. And that's an honest truth in some cities in the United States, and it's coming to Canada too. I know Europe's got problems, Australia's got problems. Not sure about New Zealand, but you don't hear much about New Zealand because they're sort of off the grid. But that's one thing that you have to really think about when you're moving to a different country. Is it going to be safe for me and my family? So when you move out of the country, out of China, right away you're going to lose part of yourself. And you would say, what do you mean I'm going to lose part of myself? Well, you're going to lose the part of you that is China. You're going to lose your culture, your heritage. You're going to lose that feeling of being at home. You're going to lose a lot of stuff. So just chasing the money to a foreign country, or to say, oh, I'd like to vote. Being a Canadian, there are good things about that sometimes, but I don't think it's worth losing your identity over. And being a Chinese person in China is an identity that you can share with the whole country rather than with just a small community, sort of in exile in a place like Vancouver or San Francisco, the Chinatowns of the world. It's just not the same, guys. It's you're lost in a foreign country. Not a good place to be, especially for your children. Second generation, third generation. I know second and third generation Chinese, and you know what? They still gravitate towards their own communities. Why? Because there's discrimination out there, and that's just the way it is. Why is that? I don't know. People are stupid, I guess. I've got a first-hand view of this because, for one thing, I did immigration, and mainly with Chinese people. So I follow up with them, and I see what their lives are like. Plus, I'm married to a Chinese girl. My brother-in-law is a cook in Vancouver that I helped emigrate to Canada. So I sort of see it all. And although they like going to a different country, although they know they're going to make more money in that country, in menial stuff, and you get into business, this is the world right now, that you get some things. Sure, that's why people immigrate to begin with, but you know what? They do lose their identity. They do long to come back to China. They miss, like Wei Fong, she misses China all the time. She misses the food. She goes to the grocery store. She says, "There's nothing to eat. There's no vegetables. And she's right. As compared to China, there just isn't the food in the Western world like it is here. This place, and look at all the businesses. You know, everybody's got a business. It's the community is something that you don't just go to Superstore and pick up your groceries. You go to all of these different little places and you pick up the things that you want. You talk to people. You know your neighbors. You know your neighbors' kids. Everybody gets along. There's so many people in such a small area, and they all get along as family and friends. It's a strange thing. What if the West was like that? Oh, that's right. It was 50 years ago. It's not like that anymore. And I'd hate to think that China was going to turn into something like the West has turned into over the last 50 years, because what they've got here is something special. And if you're a Chinese person thinking of emigrating to a different country, you're going to lose all of this stuff in the blink of an eye as soon as you jump on an airplane and you leave. So there's going to be a lot of the Chinese that have gone overseas, permanent residents, whatever, and find out that, geez, you know, the grass is not greener on the other side of the fence. It's not as safe. It's not a good place to raise children, and they're going to bring their families back to China. And I see it like Lao Ping, my brother-in-law. He's in Vancouver. He's going to work for a while, and then he says, no, he says, when I get older, I want to come back to China. I want to go home. Exactly, home. Isn't that special? It's the way it is. Wei Fong, I say, let's go to China. She says, yes. Now, when we've been back for a while, everybody says, oh, Wei Fong wants to stay in Canada. Now that she's back in China and she's feeling healthy again, she wants to stay here. It's part of who they are. Anyway, that's another video from Gweilo 60. If you like this video, as always, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button, and thanks for watching. Bye now.